We're back with U.S. Congressman Neil Abercrombie. So, Congressman, you were telling us about your college days. Did you have an experience or something that you saw that made you want to make a difference in the community, get involved with the segregation and civil rights during these times?
Well, what transpired out of that time of becoming not only aware of civil rights violations, but what had happened in Hawaii is I became very much aware of the Hawaiians themselves who were, in a sense, displaced in their own land. And I became very concerned, and I wanted to ally myself as a haole who had come in from the mainland with those folks who were trying for social and economic justice here in Hawaii, too. And that brought me to the Democratic Party at that time. I felt very, very strongly that, don't forget, this was a time of statehood. I'm going back now. For many of your listeners, this is not just when I say the last century, it literally was the last century, but it seems like not hundreds of years ago, but within the lifetime of your parents, Hawaii became a state. And so the elections first got held around 1960, and that's when the Democratic Party transferred from the territorial days into statehood times. And that's when I was able to start working in the Democratic Party for those candidates that I thought would be helpful.
So you just
advancing. Oh yeah, volunteer. I was a college student. In fact, I remember I was one of the college students in the leadership trying to get Governor Burns elected for the first time. And I worked in the campaign for Vinciano, who just recently passed away, Senator Vinciano, who was instrumental as a Roman Catholic himself in getting the abortion bill through under Governor Burns's first term. And I helped get him elected and was a student volunteer in that operation in that time. So that's why, because as I said, I became aware that there are lots of social issues here from the Hawaiians, from everybody, and trying to meld our diversity in Hawaii into a political structure that would give an opportunity to everybody. You see, a lot of your listeners, Evan, right now, hey, you want to go into business? Come on, let's do it. But in those days, let me tell you, it was not easy for someone whose last name was Leong. I'll tell you that right now. Not so easy to jump into business and get somebody to back them up and all the rest of it, because you maybe didn't have the right background. You didn't have the right foundation.
So what is it that drove you to go into politics? I mean, what were you looking to accomplish? Because
all of those things, it seemed to me, were dealt with in the political arena. The kinds of rules and regulations that got passed, the kinds of laws about discrimination in lending, who could get into school, what was going to be the tuition cost, were you going to be driven out of the opportunity to be able to get a first-class education in Hawaii? All of those things came back to politics. And the opportunity to make sure that you were going to be treated fairly and in a non-discriminatory way always came back to politics. And so if you believed in a multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic society, then politics was the way to ensure that would happen.
But when you're involved in politics, you're also leaving it up to the community to vote for you, to be their voice. Mm-hmm. What is the feeling when, you're in a race and you lose, but how can you still get involved and be a voice for the community?
Well, I can give you an example, because I first ran for office in 1970 when I was a graduate student. I ran for the U.S. Senate. And, of course, I lost. I lost the primary, but that's when I did my super senator. If you ever saw my posters, some of those things are around. They're kind of, I said on eBay, they're worth $1.98 now, I think. But that's when I said to high school students, for example, I said, ask your parents to give me a vote. I can speak for you. Because in those days, don't forget, there was a draft. Now, they were not drafting girls, but they were drafting boys. And I say boys because they were barely 18 coming out of high school, and you were eligible for the draft. Now, again, a lot of the listeners to the program right now, what are you talking about, the draft? There's no draft. I don't even know what you mean. The military is voluntary. It wasn't voluntary in those days. They drafted young men coming right out of high school. And so I ran as a graduate student for the U.S. Senate in 1970, and I didn't have a chance to win, but what I tried to do is be a voice for people. I said I was the only serious candidate because I was talking about serious issues. and not just talking about them, but saying they had to be addressed, and they had to be particularly addressed for young people who felt shut out of the whole process, but they were paying the price in blood, just as they are today in Iraq and elsewhere.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.